Hello, everyone. Today I had the opportunity to speak with Brandon Shoupe, who currently serves as the chairman for the Houston County Commission here in Houston County of Southeast Alabama. Now, he previously had served as one of its district commissioners, but then later was elected to the post of county commission chairman, which is with its own set of responsibilities, peaks and pitfalls. Well, he's running for re-election to that role, and so he was felt very privileged that he was willing to come and sit down and talk with us and talk about biographically what had brought him into that role, what's given the passion for serving in that capacity, and what he's been most proud of in the time that he's been serving there at that time. Along the way, we talked a little bit about why the people of God should care, why Christians everywhere should be thinking about how they can influence their local government because that's what affects them most and their neighbors around them. Anyway, join us on this journey. Thank you for coming in and talking to me.
Glad to be here.
I've been very curious and hoping to have the conversation about because Mayor Saliba was gracious enough to come and have the conversation. I'm very curious about kind of like the workings and the wisdom that's necessary for local politics, local, the way things have to be run and have to be handled, particularly at the county level. But we talked a little bit about the city level as well. And for me, it's something my desire is to see why the people of God ought to care. I come from a place of critiquing Christian pacifism as it relates to the workings of society. There's some who think that those are separate things. Who think somehow I'll keep my spiritual life over here as long as I'm at church. I'm kind of keep that as a separate thing. But whatever goes on in the world, that's kind of like the secular nitty gritty. That's stuff in the gravel. And the secular and the holy is like this weird dichotomy between people. Kind of like, well, okay, I go to church, but I got to get down in the mud and deal with things all day long, as though Jesus wasn't in the mud dealing with things all day long. And just my personal philosophy is that good policy, because politics relates to policy, and good policy will ameliorate human suffering and enable human flourishing. And bad policy will exacerbate human suffering and restrict human flourishing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I just think, how do Christians ever lack opinions about that? So I don't know. But
I mean, I know being involved in politics can be incredibly frustrating, especially when you put so much effort into something that you feel like you don't get anywhere sometimes.
Right.
Especially if you look at the wider world and kind of the way things are going, I can see why people would be frustrated.
I imagine. So you're currently serving as county commission chairman.
Yes.
But I see your signs around. So there's an election coming up?
There is, running for re-election. It's been a quick 4 years.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and do you have someone's running for that seat as well?
Yes. Yeah. I have an opponent. I don't know him that well.
Okay.
But he's from the Taylor area, and he's running. It's free country, and anybody can run. And certainly I'm not entitled to another job, another 4 years, just because I've served 4 years.
Right.
So, nobody's entitled to anything. These things are won by elections, and I got to go out and compete just like anybody else.
Right. Incumbents enjoy some recognition.
It does help. It does help.
Right.
But it's different. It's a different race.
Right.
You're an incumbent versus when you're kind of the new guy.
Right. But also when you're incumbent, you have a record to critique.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah, I just sat through a lunch. I got invited to a lunch out in Broadway, and the guy's never been a supporter of mine, but he invited me to lunch, and so I went out there, and that was probably a mistake. I went out there, and all he did was just lay into me about everything that we had ever done. It was always wrong, and I was corrupt, and I sat there as long as I could, and got through it. I wish I could say I enjoyed my lunch.
My goodness.
Just part of it. Everybody's got an opinion.
I can only imagine, because I mean, there are a couple of different industries where you really swim in the fishbowl, and everyone can poke and look at you from outside.
Right.
And
football coaches and politicians.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. So we moved up here just about exactly a year ago.
Okay.
Exactly a year ago. I was ordained last Saturday a year ago.
Okay.
And then instantly we packed up all of our stuff, my wife and I, and moved on Tuesday, today, exactly a year ago, to our new home. And one thing I learned in the process, it was really interesting, that she was already a big Alabama football fan before we came here. And so I used to say that she went from being a weird Alabama fan in Central Florida to a standard Alabama fan now here in Dothan.
Yeah.
And but nevertheless, what I learned as soon as we crossed the border from Florida into Alabama, I realized that one loss can cause,
it's chaos.
Exactly right. Oh my
God, you got to fire the coach. Yeah.
And the last year it was the Alabama FSU game, and I was just hearing all sorts of
doom and gloom.
I come from California. They don't have that type of rabid response to
I guess that's what makes us different or special, whichever way you want to put that.
But it does take a particularly thick skin and probably a lot of prior upbringing and training that to enter into that arena. I mean, I don't know. I could not survive that.
I wish I could tell you that when I got started, I had thick skin, but I don't think everybody does. I don't think I did, but you certainly learn to grow it.
Okay.
In this job, because you get criticized all the time, even about the most mundane thing. We did something a couple of weeks ago where we announced that we were going to share some funds with the school system. Like, it's not controversial,
right?
But there was people online criticizing it, and I was just like, why? It's like, I mean, schools need more funds,
right?
And how is this a bad thing? Could somebody explain to me how it could be a bad thing? And I just don't see it. But like I said, that one kind of surprised me. But again, you get criticized for everything.
Well, I imagine that's somewhat tied to. Well, I don't know this very well, but I mean, by my instinct is that it might be somewhat tied to something. One of the silver linings that came from COVID is that all of a sudden many public schools had to Zoom their lessons.
Yeah.
And parents suddenly were learning things that were being taught in schools that they weren't aware of.
Yeah. I can see that.
And so probably that produced a new wave of public school critique that year that you hadn't heard, that we all hadn't heard before.
Yeah.
And so now, and also an explosion of private schools as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Especially here in Dothan. Yeah.
Well, I came from Florida, and it's the Wild West now, especially as state funds became allocated for scholarships.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden now school taxes could be redirected. And I haven't followed yet Alabama school policy and law in that regard. I need to, because people ask us about the possibility of starting a school here. But it seemed like once the voucher system took effect, all of a sudden, all sorts of people who previously couldn't send their kids to a private Christian school because it was all tuition based, they couldn't afford the tuition, suddenly could. And it just, a proliferation of schools sprouted up. And so now people felt like, well, because there's alternatives to public schools, now they'll have a new opinion about how their tax dollars are being spent on public school.
Yeah.
I wonder if some of that was,
maybe, I don't know. Alabama is certainly headed in that direction in terms of taking public money and diverting it to private schools. So.
Yeah, I don't know. But I wanted to ask. Well, let me ask also really quickly while it's fresh in my brain. Does party affiliation is it even a thing at this level?
It is. So we're a political subdivision of the state, so we have to declare whether we're Republican or Democrat or other. At the city level, you don't have to in Alabama. I know in some cities across the U.S. you do, but not in Alabama. But for the state level, you have to declare a party. Now, party politics doesn't really, it influences the decisions you make. Like as a conservative Republican, I want to, try to be as lean as possible.
Right.
I don't think the citizens around here are going to support, massive tax increases for welfare benefits for people. But we've never had a Republican Democratic divide on the county commission because we deal with brick and mortar issues, and a brick is a brick. It's not a Republican brick.
I wondered about that. That's at this level. Pragmatics is really just more dominant.
Exactly.
If I could, I'd like to ask a little bit about. I'd like to give you an opportunity to kind of share biographically how you came to this position, because it's just not people when they think about politics, unfortunately, instantly think of something far more visible than at the county level.
Yeah.
And we have completely no-name people who will suddenly be asked, would they run for Congress? Will they run for this, whatever? And something with higher recognition. But I imagine that someone who says, no, I'm going to make a difference in my county locally, that conditioning is designed there was conditioning that designed you more for local impact rather than merely the notoriety that occurs by being a regular contributor on Fox News or whatever.
Exactly.
And so that made me curious.
Yeah.
What sort of biographical or conditioning in your story brought you to where you're at, where you're serving?
Well, I've lived in a couple of different areas. Lived in Auburn. Lived in Maryland, outside of D.C. Lived in Palm Bay / Melbourne, Florida. And so you see different communities, and you have different ideas on how different people do things differently. And some of that makes sense, and some of it doesn't. And I just felt like back in the day in 2014 when I first got elected that I had something unique that I could contribute. Based on my experience and certainly my level of interest. Most people, I figured out, are just really not interested in local government. I had a conversation with a guy last night. He was talking about, we're both running for election. I'm running for re-election. He's running for the first time. And he's ran several times and never won before. And he says, you know what? Most people don't care. And it's exactly true. Now, a lot of people are going to go vote. But if I were to lose, I would be a little upset.
Right.
My mom would be very upset.
Yeah.
My wife would probably be a little bit upset. But outside of that, I mean, there might be some people that might be surprised.
Right.
There might be a shock, maybe, as some people. But it wouldn't hit them in their heart, because at the end of the day, they have their own stuff that they have to deal with, and I'm not. And politics is not one of those things. So, and I get that.
That seems inverted to me, and the reason why is because most of the things in which we typically complain about government were enacted at a very local level.
Yeah.
Trans madness sweeps the country, and seems like a social pathogen that spreads through the internet. And all of a sudden now it's popping up everywhere, where school boards are reading books to students who you think that is entirely inappropriate. Those decisions were all made by school board
at
members
a local level.
People never paid attention to. Because they just thought, okay, especially in places where there's not down ballot party line voting. And especially, so as a result, they voted for something that made the news related to at some national level. But the chief complaint about something that they don't like was enacted by a local elected official. And so I often tell people, I say that's where you have the possibility of the greatest impact. Is where you pay attention to it.
Absolutely. There was some. Are we recording or?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. I lost my train of thought. So
Sorry about that.
No, that's good. There was, you had the issue in California where you had a lot of the folks that would take stuff off the shelf, and then they would get a slap on the wrist, and nobody would do anything, and so everybody's like outraged over here. We don't really have that problem in Dothan, Alabama, that much, but I mean, not saying that problem is zero, but we don't have it to that level.
Right.
And then all of a sudden the state comes out with rules and says, okay, if you're going to do this, I mean, again, not really having that big of an issue here in Alabama, but they come out with a law based on what's going on in California. Said, if you're going to do this in Alabama, by golly, we're going to charge you with a felony. And that's probably a good thing.
Right.
But the flip side of that is now we have a lot more felons in the county jail, and now we have a jail overpopulation problem.
Right.
And again, retail theft is not really adding the numbers to a whole lot to our jail, but we've got that, and then we got the dip and dunk law, to where if you violate probation, you'd go to the state penitentiary, but now you get dipped for 3 to 5 days in the county jail. That happens 3 times. If you violate your probation 3 times, then you get dunked in the county jail for 45 times, and that adds people. And now we don't have as many assistant DAs as what we need to have. The district attorney's raising money to try to hire more, better attorneys, because you can just make more money elsewhere. So it's a struggle. So we don't, and so now we can't prosecute and adjudicate cases as quickly as we used to. And so now we have more people. And so it's just the little things, the little bitty things that add up. And again, I'm not saying that what the state did, making retail theft a felony, I'm not saying that was wrong, but you have to be able to pay for that. And they changed the law, but we didn't get any more funding to pay to house those inmates.
I see. Okay.
So now we have to come up with the funding to expand a jail. That's going to be $45 million. But no one has said, okay, here's how you can go raise the revenue, because revenue involves taxes, and nobody in Alabama wants to pay taxes. And county commissions, a lot of people don't know this. by and large, we don't have the legal authority to raise taxes. If we're going to raise, we can raise certain fees like the garbage fee, but if we're going to raise a property tax in Alabama, the only people that can raise a property tax are the people themselves. It has to be voted on.
Okay.
So somebody asked me the other day, "Are you going to raise property taxes if you get reelected?" Well, I can't. Okay. You have to do that. You have to, and it has to be voted on. And so the odds of that happening are pretty much zero. Same thing with sales taxes. There's a minor exclusion. We can do sales taxes as long as 100% of it benefits education. But if we do a sales tax that benefits education, that's not going to help out in jail. And so there's been some conversations about doing that, and that's never really gone anywhere. So we have, it's all this stuff you see as you sit in this role and you work this job, you start to see how everything is connected. And it can be frustrating to try to explain that to people that are just casual observers of politics.
Right. This the silly season of a lot of political ads that are constantly on the television, and so it will be playing in the background, and I'll see so and so is the ads or feature a candidate with a series of platitudes that I know are designed to resonate with a very casual observer.
Yeah.
But my instinct is to look at the television and say, what do you mean when you say that? And do you have the ability to actually do that?
Yeah.
How in the world would you promote this policy when that's not even within the body of the laws, or how your part of Congress doesn't even enact that.
Yeah.
And so you have to, I imagine it's very difficult sometimes to explain to people.
Yes.
This is the limits of my ability.
Yeah, it can be frustrating, and I know that there was a state candidate guy running. I can't remember the guy's name, but he was running for U.S. Senate, and he was the victim of this attack ad, and the person, it was about a murder case. I can't remember the details, but the person that was murdered, their brother come out and said, "How dare you attack this person? He couldn't do anything about that."
Yeah, right.
And again, I don't know the whole backstory there, but that's politics. It's I told my mom one time, I said, a lot of times the people that wins the race is the person that told the best lie. And it's just the unfortunate part of politics a lot of times is that you really, because people, they don't sit back and really study, and I'm not saying that they're wrong for that. They just don't have time. Like, you've got your life, I've got my life. I can have an opinion about the head football coach of Alabama, but at the same time, I'm not going to study every player. I'm not going to evaluate. I'm not going to watch film on the opponent. And until you do those things, you really don't understand the game that much. But certainly, I've got an opinion. The same thing applies to politics. And so, if you have someone that can make a convincing argument, a lot of times that argument, unless you can refute it somehow, that argument, wins the day. Especially, what's really dangerous is when you have a really good lie with a lot of money behind it.
What is the quote? I don't know. You could possibly remember who this is attributed to, that says that, a lie will basically run halfway around the world before the truth can make its way out the door.
Absolutely.
And so that's a very frustrating thing to me.
Yeah.
As years ago, I discovered, one of the things you'll learn in ministry is to be able to withstand the assumptions about your intentions.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I can sympathize with that. Yeah. Yeah. I can sympathize with that.
So you've lived in Maryland before, and you said Maryland, and where else?
Maryland and around the Palm Bay or Melbourne, Florida
area. But a native to Alabama?
Native to Alabama. Grew up in Wicksburg. Live in Bay Springs now. Lived in Dothan for a few years. We moved out to Bay Springs, primarily for the school district in 2011, so our kids could go to school at Wicksburg. And it was the right decision for us. But up in Maryland, lived up there off and on. Did 3 semesters up there, sort of a co-op, and it was interesting when I come back to Dothan. This is back when Walmart was on the Circle. I think there's a Home Depot there now, and that facility's been redeveloped. But I got on the Circle and I was driving around, and after being in DC and Baltimore and seeing all the money and all the power, just observing it from the road, certainly not in the middle of it. And you come back to Dothan, Alabama, and you realize that this place that when I grew up, it was my world.
Mm-hmm.
You realize how small, and I hate to say it, but insignificant it really is in the grand scheme of the country. And so, but I think we have a special place here. I think that the people that are here are some of the best people in the world.
Right.
And that maybe I'm biased just because I'm used to the local culture here, but I get one of the things that I'm very proud of is that when someone comes from outside the area and they move to Dothan, Alabama, a lot of times they say,
"Excuse me, sir. Let me, if I could
Yeah.
pause just for a moment."
Yeah, absolutely.
What's that? I'm sorry.
As you said earlier, you're the person that does everything. So greet the visitor.
Right. Well, but so when you were here, I was thinking about specifically when you were talking about when you were here, it was kind of a whole world.
Yeah.
And then you saw this outer world.
Yeah.
For me, it's so funny because I lived in California, Oregon, Washington, Georgia, and Texas and Florida.
That's a lot. Yeah.
I've just been pretty nomadic, and a lot of those are large cities that just felt like a suit that doesn't quite fit.
Yeah.
And so now I come back to Dothan and feels like the small town I grew up in, way up in Northern California.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like I was very happy to see the world contract again.
Yeah. There's something special about small towns.
Oh yeah. Well, the big first thing I noticed is that everywhere, it doesn't matter what business I go to, whether it's anything from Walmart to Chick-fil-A or whatever business, everyone ends with "Have a blessed day."
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's like required as part of your Alabama citizen.
Yeah.
Everyone have a blessed day.
Yeah. I think that's a great habit.
Oh, it really is.
Yeah.
But we were able to identify 3 things where you're kind of like live in Southern Alabama now. One is everyone says "Have a blessed day." 2 is the selling point at your local furniture store for every piece of furniture. The selling point is where you hide the gun.
Yeah.
And the third reason you're living in Southeast Alabama is at Eastgate Park. Eastgate Park, funded by the city, part of the city's park system, has a elevated platform so you can practice shooting from a blind. Archery shooting from a blind.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, you're like right. So it's like the city funds archery bow hunting from.
Yeah,
like,
that's
you're in the right spot.
Yeah, yeah. There's something special about it, and as I was saying earlier, one of the things I'm most proud of is that when new people come here, they say, you know what, everybody's just. I always ask them like, what's different. And then sometimes without it even asking, they say, everybody is so friendly here. They're so friendly. And I love hearing that.
It's fantastic. And it took us a little while to feel very comfortable. And everyone's so accommodating. So welcoming. It's been ridiculous. And I think some of that is the fact that I came from a small town like this, way up in Northern California.
Yeah.
And the fact that you would think that somehow being from California would be something of an obstacle, but where I come from, way up north, is something of a West Coast annex of the South, because of just how far it is away from everything.
Yeah.
And so when we go to the rodeo in Ozark or the Peanut Festival, like that, very much is the same as the county fair where I grew up with.
That's amazing.
It's amazing. It feels like very much like home.
That's awesome.
But politics didn't bring you here, and business did. So.
Yeah, I so my degree is in software engineering, and I thought that's what I wanted to do with my life. And I figured out too late in life that I did not want to be chained to a computer 24/7. And I worked when I worked for the government. It was interesting. You were on the inside, and you kind of knew some things behind the scenes that was going on, and that was enough to make the job interesting to me. But then I worked as a government contractor, and I was still working on stuff that required a clearance. But you don't really like you're building a tool, for instance. You don't really know what that tool is being used for, who is being used against. So you don't really know a lot. And so it just got in every. I met this guy named Ralph, and he was kind of this hunched over guy, older guy. He's probably passed away now, but I'll never forget Ralph. He had this kind of a slack jaw, very balding on top. And he said, Brandon, I used to, he said, working at this, I won't say the name of the company, working at, this company is a lot like stirring crap. I was like, what do you mean, Ralph? He said, every new project is just another stir of the same crap. And I remember one time I had finished this project, and I got stuck on this other project, and it was just another version of the same project I had just done. And I thought, I was like, I don't want to end up like Ralph, and I think that's where I'm heading, because I'll be honest with you, I was miserable. I had people that would come up to me in the hall. This happened twice in a week. Random people. you need to smile more. I mean, I guess I just was like, just not happy with life. And so I was so miserable. I remember I made my wife miserable. So I'd come home and just talk about how miserable I was. I made her miserable. So we decided, you know what, we're going to move back to Dothan. We're going to move back home. We want to start a family anyway. And we're just going to figure it out. Like, I didn't really have a plan. I thought about buying a business, didn't have a whole lot of money at the time, and talked to a guy and ended up working for Jeff Moody selling real estate for a little while. And it was a little bit before the Great Recession. Didn't know a lot of people in Dothan at the time. Still young, so nobody thought of me as this authority figure on commercial. I thought I was going to make money selling commercial real estate, which is definitely an older person's game when you build up a lot of business connections. And I didn't have any of that, and I didn't do very well. And so, so I thought of myself as a failure. And we had one kid at the time, and my wife was moving up in her company, but she really, it was a stressful job, and we got pregnant. Number one was planned. Number two was a little bit of a surprise.
Right.
We were going to have number two, just not quite that quickly.
Right.
And I thought, I've got to do something to make money and support my family. And so I started designing websites. I did it for my aunt and uncle first, and then I did it for some another uncle, and then some family friends, and it just kind of grew from there, and ended up having 4 employees at one point in time. Sold the company in 2016, which was 2 years after I got elected to the Houston County Commission. And I've been on the entrepreneurial track ever since. I've bought some online businesses. Some I've lost everything, lost all the money I put into it. One I was able to double my money and get out of, and that was very successful. Had a good time with that one. And recently bought along with a partner Adventureland. So me and my wife, we own half of Adventureland now.
Okay.
My partner Payne and his wife Megan, they own the other half, and my wife and Payne are the ones that run it. And I thought I'd be more involved in the beginning, but I got to figuring out once I got in there, because my wife really wanted to be involved, and so I said, okay, this can be your deal, and I'll come help out. But there's enough meat on the bone there for 3 chiefs. In other words, there's enough stuff to do for 3 chiefs. I'm sorry, 2 chiefs, but not 3.
Okay.
And so, I'd come in and hurry around and, spout off my opinion. They just look at me as like, yeah, we're not doing that. So I go support my wife. And
Who are you, and why are you giving an opinion right now?
Yeah, you're never here. Why do you have an opinion? So I support them. I listen to my wife, deal with her frustrations sometimes, but she absolutely loves it. Payne absolutely loves it. And so I'm happy. And, I'm still a partner, but I'm not super involved in the company.
That's Adventureland?
Adventureland theme park.
Where is that again?
It's on 84 West. So
okay.
If you're leaving downtown,
that's the miniature golf place.
Yeah.
I've made a mental note that I actually enjoy batting cages as a pastime. So
you need to go check it out. Yeah, we just got those fixed. They were down for about 3 days.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah. No, I enjoy that. It's kind of like it's almost a driving range to me.
Yeah. So, you take out your frustration.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Yeah.
I've got a heavy bag at home that I take those out all.
Oh, you do?
Exactly.
Okay, yeah. Well, I've got one at the gym, and let me tell you, that wears you out.
It does, and it's amazing how much that just kind of calms everything else down too.
Yeah.
My one pre-ministry career I had many years ago was teaching martial arts. And so I taught Kung Fu full time, and had a school in Redding, California as well. And so a lot of that, that old combative instincts, like I've got to train and work this out.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's awesome. That's awesome.
But so now you're running for re-election, and you have a record sheet that people to look at, and because of that critiques, the critique that people can, the record that people can critique, there's a kind of an interesting election season of people having an opinion about what you've done. However, the campaign goes in terms of if the opponent is representing your record well and so forth, all those things come together.
Yeah.
How has family, found that to be unsavory or fine? Or
I tell you, the person that takes it the worst in my family, that really hates when I get criticized, that is my mom. My wife, it just washes off. Those people don't know what they're talking about. That's what she'll say. She's on to the next thing. My children, they really don't pay a whole lot of attention to it. They're in school, they have their young friends, and I think some of my friends, some of my daughter's friends, thinks that it's neat that her dad is the chairman. I'm sure they probably don't know what a chairman is or what it does, and that's fine. I didn't when I was that age either. My son completely tuned out. He's going to college. He does his video games. You know, he's in his own world. But my mom really takes it hard, and I've had to tell mom. I said, "Mom, you really need to stay off of Facebook sometimes,
Right.
especially when when something controversial is brewing and people are coming out of the woodwork to criticize me or the committee or
Right.
whatever." But it doesn't sit well watching her baby boy get attacked.
Oh
So
gosh.
that's been a conversation that we've had a couple of times.
So there are 5 committee members,
Yes,
1 chairman. You is that is the chairmanship selected from the committee, or is that a position that is elected?
it's
by the-
elected, and there's 5 members on the commission. 4
Okay.
of those are district commissioners. So
Okay.
Commissioner Herring is District 3.
Okay.
Commissioner Ivy is District 4, which I used to have District 4.
Okay.
Commissioner Adams is District 2,
Okay.
and Commissioner Harvey is District 1. Commissioner
Okay.
Harvey is the only Democrat on the commission. And then I'm elected countywide. Now,
Mhm.
different counties do it differently. I know in Pike County they have 5 or 7 commissioners, and they get in a room and figure out who's going to be the chairman. The way that we do it, in my opinion, is the best because you have a countywide elected chairman. There's stability in that role. You don't. Some counties rotate it, and so it's hard to keep carrying the water without spilling the water when you're always passing off the bucket.
Right.
So I can hold on to the bucket. I can carry the water all the way across the finish line for a lot of projects that we do.
What have you been proudest of in your first term?
There's a lot of things. I'm proud of that we were able to save the farm center. When I originally voted to sell the farm center.
The farm center is where?
The farm center on the circle,
Okay.
next to Cottonwood Highway. It was a fiscal albatross around the commission's neck. We lost a lot of money in the farm center. We were trying to do events out there, and back in the day when the Peanut Festival was there, it was
Okay.
it made sense. Peanut Festival moved, well over 25 years ago, so they've been gone for a while. So the building, we didn't have the revenue to put into the property. It just continued to dilapidate, and no one would really say, "Okay, we need to stare reality in the face and do something with this." And so we finally did, and we voted to sell the farm center to a developer. The city, because they have an interest in it, they stepped in and said, "No, we want to execute the option to purchase the farm center." And then so I was like, "Oh, well, what a shocker." When I was running for election 4 years ago, I heard more than anything else, "I just can't believe you are selling the farm center. That's just a historic building, a lot of memories." And
I'm sorry I interrupt. I'm trying to place it on the circle. I mean, I don't know.
Cottonwood. So where the Publix is on the south,
Yes.
East side. So right across the road from that. That kind
okay.
of
Now, okay. Thank you.
that structure.
Yes.
that looks-
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, I went back to City of Dothan, and we were able to negotiate something. So we've saved the farm center. We've invested about $6.5 million in the structure, and so it's going to be saved, and it's going to be I think it's going to be a blessing for the community for many years to come. It's something that if you wanted to have a church service or a revival or a gun swap or midget wrestling, whatever you want to do, you could do it at the farm center. And
I've been curious about what's its use now, because I live not far from there, down south of the circle.
Yeah.
And so when you drive by there, sometimes you'll see the farmers market that occurs there in the hallway. But that's the only time I see activity.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure what other use that area had.
Yeah. So it's going to be the permanent home for the Poplar Head Farmers Market, which I'm excited about. They're going to have about 40 vendors this year.
Okay.
Produce vendors and other vendors. But it's going to be available for rent for the public. So if you wanted to rent again to do whatever, you could do it. And so anyway, it's going to breathe new life into that structure. Already have had several people express interest. We've got the National Peanut Festival is going to manage that property on our behalf. There's some things that government does really well, and the city of Dothan has done a much better job of this with the Civic Center. But I know even in the past they've struggled to kind of keep the Civic Center full. I don't think the county is going to do a good job managing that. So we've contracted with the National Peanut Festival. They're going to manage that, promote it, and rent it out for us. And I think that's a good deal.
Right. And then, so you're saving the farm center. Other accomplishments over the last
We've been able to do a lot in terms of roads. And I know, and I'm sure there's someone probably listening to this right now driving down a really bumpy county road. And they may be thinking, what am I talking about? But we've put a lot of money into the county road. So And again, it was one of these things you don't really know and appreciate until you get into it. But the road system is a lot more complicated. It's a lot more complicated than saying, "Hey, we need to pave more roads. Let's go pave this road and that road."
Right.
You have on-system roads. You have off-system roads. On-system roads, you get 80% federal match on those, so those tend to stay a little bit smoother. Off-system roads, which is a 100% county-owned road, like we have to pay for that out of the
Right.
general fund. And historically, we've not had a lot of revenue to be able to put towards that. We had the gas tax that was raised in 2019, very unpopular at the time, but it's allowed us to really save some roads that, quite honestly, would probably turn back into dirt roads by now if we did not get that funding. Windmill Road was a road that I grew up on. That's one of them that would probably be a dirt road now if were it not for that funding. But then even on top of that, we've had to put millions of dollars on top of that out of the general fund that we could have put in law enforcement, that we could have put in the jail, that we could have put in education, or a lot of things that probably be very popular. But we saw and we still see the direction the roads are going. So I'm not saying that we've fixed that problem, but we've really gotten back to basics. And if we're going to have a road system, we're going to have to dedicate some additional money, more than we're used to maintain it.
So, like for example, the sheriff is elected,
Yes,
but SO is funded through the county commission.
Yes, yeah. We give we help the county school board pay for those SROs, and we give them $500,000 a year, and they use all of that money and then some for the SROs that we provide.
But because I think about that, I would have been one of those people that in years past would have thought, okay, really, does the county need all that money? And and then something as unspectacular as road maintenance might not have been on my radar.
Yeah.
But for about 17 years now, up until coming to Dothan, I've been a chaplain for various fire departments where I've lived.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until I was riding in the back of an ambulance in Seminole County, Florida, out very far away from the major urban area, where we had made a medical call, and as we're trying to get back to the main road, we're along a dirt road that is a county road but hasn't been maintained yet, and the EMTs really have a hard time getting an IV.
Yeah.
Because we're bouncing around so much.
Yeah.
And this is a patient that doesn't really need to be bouncing around four-wheel drive right now.
Yeah.
And because funding for maintaining those roads that go to those residential areas it wasn't there.
Yeah.
And so I thought now all of a sudden it was on my radar.
Yeah.
In terms of the inglorious process by which a county maintains their rural thoroughfares.
And it gets more expensive by the day. When I was elected in 2014, the cost was about $60,000. It was about $65,000 a mile to resurface. And I remember at the time we were thinking, man, that is just criminally high.
Oh, gosh.
Today, in 2026, it costs $160,000 a mile. And it'll cost more next year. And it'll cost more the next.
And all those costs are skyrocketed because materials, labor, all that?
Labor has become extremely expensive in America. And I think we have had the baby boomers. I mean, they are predominantly retiring or retired by now. So they still need the services, but they're not in the workplace producing goods and producing tax revenue. So it's we're entering an era where we have and we're not immune to immune to what the other governments are dealing with. So you talk the city of Dothan, you talk the state of Alabama. We're entering an era where we have flattening tax revenue, but costs are still going up.
Okay,
and so that's something that we're going to have to deal with, and it's going to be painful. And there's going to be some popular things, like resurfacing the roads that we need to do more of that we're just not going to have the funds to do.
Well, is the county commission able to be influential at all with regard to attracting business?
Yes, so we do have a part to play. Now, when I ran in 2014, I thought that the county chairman, which was Culver at the time, and the mayor, and these top elected officials, I thought they were the ones that went out and recruited these companies. That's not how it works. So we have professionals that do that. Matt Parker, Colton Curitan, there at the Dothan Area Chamber of Commerce. We fund them partially to help grow our economy. a business executive is not going to say, okay, well, let's call the county commission chairman in Houston County, Alabama, because they're not going to say that because they know.
Surely you've got a Rolodex of how many people you can call right.
Yeah, and I'm not on that list. They want to know, okay, I need this many acres. I'm producing this product.
Right.
I need this much power. I need this much water. I need this much sewer. And they know I'm going to, probably not have a clue about where in the county we can go to deliver all of what they need. But Matt and Colton, they do. So they call them. So my job is to not, go out and knock a business exec over the head, bring you back to Houston County and say, okay, set up a shot right there. My job and all the elected officials' job is to participate when it's needed, but it's not all the time. But to make sure that Matt and Colton have a good idea of what we're looking for. For instance, we're not looking for solar farms. We're not looking for data centers.
Thank you so much.
But we are.
Florida is covered with that eyesore,
and our citizens don't want that, and it produces almost zero jobs. We want manufacturing. That's what we want, and they know that. Of course, we will take a good, high-paying office job any day of the week, but we want manufacturing jobs. We want blue-collar jobs, and they know that, and we. And we fund them, and they go make that happen.
Right.
And they've had some success over the years. Now we don't have an interstate. That makes it challenging to recruit some industries, but despite that challenge, I think we've been very successful.
Well, I'm very curious about the growth that I consider to be inevitable post-COVID.
Yeah.
Because it did produce a lot of remote work. That I don't think you're fitting that genie totally back in the bottle. I know there are many companies and major urban centers that are like, that say we want their employees back in the office. But I don't think remote work is going away. And what it does is enable people to ask themselves, do I want to live in a major city where rioting and different things and all the different social unrest I see on the news could happen anytime?
Yeah.
If I have the option to live someplace that Mayor Saliba referred to as the sweet spot, just big enough to have economic opportunity, but just small enough that you can imagine.
Still a small town, yeah.
And so if I can be there and still, I see that, this is just my layman's prediction. I do see Dothan becoming more and more attractive to people who, interstate notwithstanding, be more attractive to people who would like to not be close to those places that make the news.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that you just described that recently or not recently moved to Dothan or moved to Houston County because they wanted to be away from all the issues that they were dealing with, the heavy taxes, the social unrest. They wanted to be in a place that was calmer, that had an affordable tax burden. And I know people that grew up here. Of course, our taxes are very high. I don't want to pay taxes any more than you do. But if you go look out at all the other options on the table, we are very blessed.
Yeah.
So I think it is that sweet spot. I do think we have something special here, and that's not just from the tax environment, from the people. We also have our challenges. We have challenges that relates to education, but every community is going to have challenges. No community is going to be perfect until the one that I hope me and you, the community that me and you call home after we pass. But until then, we're always going to have problems, and that's what we get paid the big bucks, so to speak, to try to fix. Is try to take what we've got and make it not different. I don't want to change Houston County. I don't want to make Dothan something that's not, but I want to take it and make it a little bit better version of itself.
And that growth, and trying to maintain its character through some inevitable growth.
Yeah,
I do see it as somewhat inevitable just because of the national trends we see.
Yeah.
My gosh, the population of Florida and Texas exploded, such that they even put up billboards on I-10 going out, past El Paso, do not California my Texas, and on 95 in Florida, don't New York my Florida.
Yeah.
And so it's like that was their response to the population explosion.
Yeah.
But now I think that as you see more people looking at urban centers and wondering whether or not this is the best place for me and a family trying to raise a family, what are the options? And Dothan is one of those that is a great, is going to be that option that people are going to be looking for.
I think you're right.
But for me, I try to always persuade people not to overlook these elections as a Christian responsibility.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm so passionate about that is because, like I said, my time with the fire departments, and interacting with sheriff's offices and police departments as well. And you see in those emergency moments a lot of the seemingly incongruous and dysfunctional aspects of government all coming together to produce a miracle.
Yeah.
The nexus of all, because we all love to critique government. It's our favorite pastime.
And we're all very good at it.
Exactly right. But all those things about government we like to critique, oh my gosh, it's so corrupt, and this is so much waste, and that's fraud happens there. But yet when 911 happens, when someone calls 911, I've made the case that every 911 call started with prayer. Because whether a person's conscious of it or not, somewhere deep in the back of their brain, they scream, God help me.
Yeah.
And then perhaps had the wherewithal to pick up the phone and call 911. That prayer started everything else after that. And then there was a call, there was a call center, a dispatch, a tone, an apparatus, and personnel. But those are just the logistics of getting the prayer answered. So when SO or PD or FD shows up at a place, over a road that their vehicles can go over, and they go and there is a radio signal that can reach them there, and there is water that can from a local hydrant. There's a lot of processes that we love to critique and call dysfunctional that seemingly came together to answer their prayer in that moment.
Absolutely.
And I always like to call that kind of like the decidedly unspectacular miracles.
Yeah.
Because those are all things that were determined by someone's either engagement with or ignoring of a local election.
Yeah.
And, you put that fine point upon it, all those things that a person normally wouldn't be interested in suddenly were the most important thing in answering their prayer in that moment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think Christians should pay attention and should vote. I'll tell you something that a lot of people may find shocking. I really don't pay a whole lot of attention to national news. Back in the day when I first got involved in politics, I just absorbed. I remember being in college, just watch the news all the time, which is funny to think about now. Yeah, yeah. And I was so into it, and like, who's Bush going to appoint for this, and who they're going to appoint for that, and boy, I can't believe what the German chancellor said. But these days, none of that stuff really affects my life,
Right.
But the decisions that we make locally do, and certainly the national stuff, I recognize it does have an impact, and sometimes it has a huge impact on the policies that they make, and how that shows up and affects our pocketbook. But I do know at the national level that my ability to influence that is all. A zero is not the right answer, but it's not very far off from correct. I have almost a infinitesimal amount of influence on national policy, but I can influence what I do here, and that's why I love local politics. And I don't obsess about the national stuff. I don't waste a whole lot of time worrying about whether this person's going to get reelected or not. I choose to not let that bother me. But I really focus on the things that I have more control over, and that's the local stuff, and that's what I enjoy.
Well, we tend to inverse a sphere of concern with sphere of influence.
Yeah.
I have almost no influence over what things happen at national level, but that's where my greatest concern seemingly is.
Yes, yeah.
And where those actually should be more congruent.
Yeah.
I should have the greatest passion for the things I can influence the most.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I oftentimes tell, because I do interact with people who will constantly tell me that they share with me their cynicism about politics in general.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's all corrupt. There's no difference between all of them and so forth. And I say, I hear you. I'm not dismissing your cynicism, but can we at least put a scale on it?
Mm-hmm.
That your cynicism seems to be less justified the closer to home it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's where you're able to have the bigger
Absolutely.
impact.
Absolutely. And every vote matters. There was a guy.
I mean, typically at the local level, the votes are sometimes, decided by, small margins.
Well, I'll tell you a story real quick. When I was the chairman of the Republican Party a few years back, there was a tie in a Republican primary, and the rules of the Republican Party said that the party chairman for the county decides who the winner is in the case of a tie. And The one was 2 votes behind, and they canvassed the provisional ballots, which I won't get into what a provisional ballot is. But at the end of that canvassing, he had erased a 2-vote deficit, and now they were tied. And I had, I was going to call this meeting and get them to make their pitch to the party and have the party members decide on who the winner was. But then I was told, no, you have to name a winner by 5 o'clock. So I had them roll a 20-sided dice 3 times, the most fairest way. It wasn't going to be decided by one flip of a coin. I got this 20-sided die, roll it 3 times. Whoever rolls the highest score wins. And I thought it was fair.
Dungeons and Dragons fan.
A D&D dice decided the winner of that election. And the guy that lost still won't talk to me to this day. But it was the fairest thing that I could come up with, and I had to pick a winner. And this, so, a person close to the person that was ahead, right, and then tied at the end, he ended up winning. They didn't vote, and I can't remember the reason why, but for whatever reason, something come up. They didn't make the time to go vote, and if they would have just voted,
right,
that would have saved me and him and everybody else a lot of grief.
Oh my goodness, that's just, I can see that's both funny in a bad way.
Yeah,
but and I could see
it was not my funnest day.
No, it could just be a nightmare in many ways. Yeah. And hopefully certain friendships aren't strained by those things. But oh gosh.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate it. I mean, the last question I just really had is, you attended church yourself?
I do. Yeah.
Where's that?
Covenant United. Well, it used to be United Methodist. Now Covenant Methodist Church on Highway 84 in Dothan. Yeah.
It's on where?
Highway 84 in Dothan.
Okay.
So, Pastor Kyle Gatlin is the pastor, and Hayes McKay was a pastor before him. Loved Hayes. He left us too soon. He passed away from cancer a few years ago. Very good man, and it's a good church. That's where me and my family call our church home. So. Yeah,
and I hope that the politics in terms of and having as many critics of the performance as you have constituents. I hope none of that follows you to church.
It really doesn't. It really doesn't. Which is kind of nice. I mean, it's it's literally my sanctuary, and no one really. I mean, I talk to folks and we hobnob, but no one really bothers me. And so it's a nice respite from the week.
Well, thank you so much for coming and talking to me. I really enjoyed it,
and
I appreciate being able to kind of share this with others in terms of humanly how this comes about and how that's executed. Because probably, James says, if anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally without finding fault.
Yeah.
And so of these areas, wisdom is probably the more local you get, the more wisdom required, because policy isn't just dictated by a party affiliation or what soundbite it will achieve at some national level. So probably the tighter the circle, the greater the need for wisdom because the hardest choices aren't between good and bad, but between good and best.
That's right. You talked about the bumpy road earlier. A soundbite is never smooth the bumpy road. It takes dollars, cents. Right. It takes manpower, and to be able to make a decision to smooth the road out, you're going to have to give up doing something else.
Right. Exactly. Thank you so much for coming and joining me. I really appreciate it.
Yep, I enjoyed it as well.
If you enjoyed this content, please hit like and subscribe, and we will keep it up.